Hi there. Thanks for joining me here on Conversations for Yoga Teachers. I'm your host, Karen Fabian, the founder of Bare Bones Yoga and the creator of the Momentum Magic Method, the way to become a confident teacher, one who effortlessly walks around the room, shares clear cues, easily builds sequences, and speaks from your heart, sharing authentically with your students. Here on the podcast, you'll discover new and inspiring ways to share your cues and create your sequences. You'll uncover habits and frameworks all designed to empower you so that you can teach in a way that feels authentic and natural. For some episodes, I'll have a guest, and other episodes I'll share with you on my own, and in each one, you'll always get action steps and takeaways you can apply right away to your teaching. In addition to the podcast, follow me on Instagram and TikTok for daily videos. You'll see a link on both of my profiles, my Stan Store link. Click it and unlock ways you can get the support you need to be the teacher of your dreams. You'll find links to the podcast, my free ebook, and other resources to help you be the best teacher you can be. You'll also find the link to my signature program, the Yoga Anatomy Blueprint Learning Program, and you can see if you qualify to enroll. So with that, let's get on with today's show. Hi there. Welcome to Conversations for Yoga Teachers. I'm your host, Karen Fabian, and this is episode 360. I'm recording this on July 17th, 2025, and this will go live on July 21st. First of all, I'd like to welcome you to this solo episode. As I mentioned in last week's show, I've been doing so many interview episodes that I'm loving getting back to just me and you, just talking to you directly without a guest. Not that I don't love having guests, but I've really been missing just the mano a mano, as if we're sitting in a coffee shop, just having a conversation. So really for the next several weeks, maybe even months, it's really going to be me and you doing the podcast thing. So just on that note, if there are specific topics you'd like to see me cover, please send me a DM in Instagram. My handle is Bare Bones Yoga, and let me know what the topic is, and I'd be happy to include it. And even give you a shout out if you want me to include your name. Just note that in the message. So today we're going to be talking about intuition. And, this is kind of a intuitive hit that came to me. No kind of weird pun intended, but it really truly came to me as an intuitive hit to focus on this today. I actually was going to focus on something different, which had to do with feedback. And if we have time, I might just quickly add in a piece about that. But I wanted to talk about this intuitive piece because I think that this can be so helpful for you to at least acknowledge, to at least recognize that tapping into your intuition is a really powerful step that you can do towards finding your most authentic and confident way of teaching. So by the end of this episode, you are going to have a clearer idea of the direction you want to go as a yoga teacher. So the first thing, I'll ask you just off the top is, where do you want to go as a yoga teacher? I mean, I know for, a lot of yoga teachers, when I ask a question like that, they'll sort of downplay what they're doing. They'll say something like, oh, well, I have a full-time job, so I'm just teaching yoga on the side. And when I hear that, I just want to jump up and down and say, no, don't downplay what you're doing. It doesn't matter if you're teaching, quote, on the side and you have a full-time job, or you're a stay-at-home mom and you're, quote, teaching on the side, or you're retired and you're, quote, teaching on the side. Do not minimize the impact of what you're doing. When you're doing what you're doing, namely teaching yoga, that is part of your role, your place in this world. You're choosing to do that. So when I hear yoga teachers say in this minimizing way, "Oh, I don't have any direction to what I'm doing. I'm just teaching on the side." I just I really encourage you, if this resonates with you and this is what you hear yourself doing, I really encourage you to examine what's behind that minimizing. Because for a lot of yoga teachers, they think about the money. They think about, oh, well, I'm not teaching enough classes to make enough money to have this actually be something where I need a direction for what I'm doing. I can just go to the studio and teach my one class a week, and that's fine. And again, that's minimizing it. I'm not saying that you need to have some sort of life altering goal, but without direction, then what are you actually doing? So again, I don't know how much of that applies to you. Just think about your gut reaction to the question, what direction do you want to go in as a yoga teacher? I mean, if somebody were to ask me that, I would say, my main focus is to help as many yoga teachers get out there and teach confidently. And the vehicle that I use to do that is either my one-on-one program, the Yoga Anatomy Blueprint Learning Program, or my group program, the Yoga Anatomy Accelerator. And through those two programs, I help yoga teachers build their confidence and skill so that they can go out in their communities and teach yoga and feel like it's easy and fun and feel like they're making an impact. See how that went? I didn't have to think about it. I didn't minimize it. I didn't say, oh, well, you know what? I have this program and sometimes I have people enroll, other times I don't. I don't really have any consistency to how many people enroll every month. So I'm not really thinking about that too much. Like if someone enrolls, great. If I have a way to work with people inside these programs and meet my goal, my vision, great. I don't do that. Everything that I do is connected to that mission. And even if I was teaching one class a week and didn't have a program that I shared, didn't have a way that I worked with yoga teachers one-on-one, I would still have a lot of intention behind that one class a week that I teach. So again, this might be a journal exercise for you. What direction do you want to go in as a yoga teacher? So, when I started out teaching yoga, I knew that I wanted to focus my classes on anatomy because I'd, gone to school originally thinking I wanted to be a physical therapist. When I went to Boston University as an undergrad, I completed the pre-med courses. I went into the physical therapy school at BU, which is in the Sargent College of Allied Health Professions. I thought I wanted to be a PT. And it was halfway through that program that I realized I don't want to be a physical therapist. I want to work with the whole person, the whole body, the mind, brain, and muscles and bones and all of the anatomy. And so I switched out of the PT program and graduated with an undergrad degree in rehab counseling. And I worked initially as a social worker and a discharge planner in hospital settings. And that was the beginning of my love of anatomy, of movement, of um, kinesiology, of joint mechanics, of functional movement, all of the topics, all of the subject matter that comprise the human movement system. So when I went to my first yoga class in 1999, it was no surprise to me that I had found exactly what I wanted to do with my life because that yoga class showed me I could actually have a job. I could actually have a role in this world in terms of occupation. That's a beautiful blend of everything that I've loved for my whole life. And so I knew when I started teaching, if I were to be asked the question, what direction do you want to go as a yoga teacher, when I'd been teaching only a couple of weeks, I would have answered that question as I did back then. I want to focus my classes on anatomy, on clear cues to anatomy, on functional movement, not super complicated poses, not a bunch of arm balances, not making my classes for super bendy people. Not that there's anything wrong with those things. If that's what speaks to you, great, but that didn't speak to me. And so I knew my classes were going to be the kind of class where the students came and they learned about the body, where I shared anatomy in my cues, where I talked about functional movement off the mat. Over the years, I've developed this approach to teaching where the classes are transformational, not just transactional. A transactional class is one where you teach the class, students are within the four walls of the room. It's a space where they're receiving the sequence and they feel great when they're done. But there's no transferability really to their life. There is, but maybe the teacher's not calling it out. But a transformational yoga class, in my mind, is when you are teaching and you're calling out different things about posture, about movement, about sleep, about nutrition, about overall health and wellness, about mindset. You're pulling other things in to the class and pointing out things that people are doing on the mat that they can do IRL in real life. And this is the way people start to connect the dots. So now the class that they're experiencing is beyond the four walls and it becomes integrated into their day. They're sitting at their desk and they hear your voice saying, sit up a little more, squeeze your shoulder blades together, get those rhomboids and middle traps activated, or get up and do a couple of lunges, get that glute max activated, or give yourself an extra hour of sleep, or start your day with protein. I mean, I'm not saying you need to add these specific things into your classes. What I'm saying is I'm giving you an illustration of what a transformational class can look like, where people leave the room and they feel like they've learned something. They feel like they're taking tools from the class out into their life to make their life better, to make their health better, to make their mental health better. And so I knew that was the way I wanted to teach. And so when I began teaching in 2002 or 3, I was that kind of teacher, but nobody else was teaching like that I knew. When I was going to people's classes, they were giving all sorts of life advice mixed into cues to action and anatomy and somatic cues and alignment cues. Because my original teacher, Baron Baptiste, spoke a lot to the personal coaching sort of coaching approach to teaching. There was a lot of mindset content mixed in with teaching physical cues in a class. So a lot of us that trained under Baron, a lot of people mimicked that approach. But I knew that I wanted my classes to be, as I just described to you, this sort of transformational experience. And I knew that my passion was focusing on the anatomy, but all around me, everybody else was doing something different. And that didn't change as the years went on and I taught in different studios and I stopped teaching at the Baptiste studios and I taught in a handful of other studios here in Boston for many, many years, like over 10 years in these studios. I had a lot of longevity there in these different places. I would see people coming out of the class before mine, and I had a sense of what they had done, and I could hear the music and I could hear the teacher, and I knew that I was an odd fish in a pond of a lot of people doing a lot of other stuff. And I still stuck to the way that I knew was authentic to me because I knew intuitively that this was the way I was designed to teach, that this was what lights me up. I knew that speaking to the anatomy and functional movement was what I loved and what I wanted to share with people. And I did it despite messaging and evidence to the contrary. I think that particular story is just the beginning of this conversation that I want to have with you about following your intuition. So now that you have a sense, and of course, fast forward to today, I mean, the two programs I have that I mentioned to you at the beginning, those two programs at their core are based on my 10-step blueprint for understanding anatomy, because that is at the heart of being a confident, highly skilled teacher, understanding movement. And it's just impossible for teachers to teach themselves anatomy by reading a book or taking a course and just watching videos. It just doesn't work that way. If it did, everybody would know it, and they don't. So that's why my programs are filled with live sessions and one-on-one coaching calls to really bring the information to life. So let's talk about why your intuition matters. So your intuition matters because it comes from within you. It's your inner compass, your inner guide, your inner voice. I know that you know about it on an intellectual level, but I want you to think about right now today as a yoga teacher, are you teaching in a way that's in sync with your intuition? So, the way that a lot of teachers go, and I sort of hate to go into this conversation like this because I don't want to come across as negative against the teacher training process. But the way a lot of yoga teachers go into teaching is heavily influenced by the messaging in the yoga industry. Take a 200 hour, take a 300 hour, take a 500 hour. Hours equal expertise. Hours equal I'm qualified. And the yoga industry does a really good job with their messaging. And the reason I know this is because I have so many conversations with yoga teachers who are unsatisfied, frustrated, feeling like they're not cut out for teaching. And all they've done is accumulate hours. So that shows me that hours alone isn't working. But again, the messaging that teachers hear is you need to have 200, you need to have 300, you need to have 500. So, of course, people equate in their mind more hours equals more expertise, equals more satisfaction, equals maybe even more money. So, when that doesn't bear itself out, teachers are often like a cork in the ocean. They're lost. I don't know where to go from here. When in large part, the answer is right there within you. Your intuition, just like mine, telling me that the kind of yoga teacher I was designed to be is one that focuses on anatomy and functional movement and ways that I could make my classes transformational, as I described earlier. You have an intuitive pull inside you that is probably screaming out to you, especially if you're teaching right now and you don't feel like things are going well. Your intuition is probably screaming at you right now, but you're probably stifling it in service to all these other things you think you quote unquote have to do, or things that quote unquote other people do. So let's talk about how to tap into your intuition. So, one of the best ways to tap into your intuition is self inquiry. And I'm going to tell you at the end of this episode how you can download my 5-day confidence challenge, which is based on my confidence practice. I have this methodology for building your confidence called the confidence practice. And it's a framework to build your confidence, and it has 6 pillars. And one of the pillars is self inquiry. If you're never asking yourself the questions that matter, you're never going to be able to tap into your intuition. And keep in mind, as you tap into your intuition with respect to what we're talking about here, which is being the yoga teacher you dream of being, that will positively influence your life. Because the path to becoming the yoga teacher you dream of being is really the same path as being the person you want to be, being the person you dream of being the person who has the qualities you dream of being. And you might hear that and say, oh God, Karen, get off your high horse. This has nothing to do with me as a person. This is just that little slice of me who's a yoga teacher. Absolutely not. You are you when you walk in to teach your classes, and you bring all of your limiting beliefs, all of your, if you have any lack of self-confidence, any hangups, any insecurities, all of that you're bringing in. So as we knock those things away in service to elevating you to be the yoga teacher you dream of being, we're not just elevating that one part of you, we're up-leveling all of you. It's not like we can separate you into little buckets. I know sometimes I talk about the yoga teacher part of you, and we can sort of frame it in that way. But ultimately, the work you do is as a yoga teacher in service to becoming the kind of teacher you dream of being is in service to you as a person. Being the yoga teacher you dream of being is a self-growth, a personal growth experience. I can liken it to my entrepreneurial journey over the past 15 plus years. It is a really powerful inner work experience when you work for yourself. And I can say that and compare it to when I worked for 20 years in corporate, when I got a regular paycheck, when I had a boss, when I had a C-level job. I don't even remember I think I was vice president of customer service at one point in my life, and I had a 6-figure salary. I had that life where there was routine, where there was routine money coming in, where I wasn't marketing myself, where I had a job I could sort of hinge on my, you know, perceived expertise and job title. But as an entrepreneur, I can't do that. I'm constantly proving myself. I'm constantly interacting with yoga teachers who don't know me and building that know, like, and trust factor. Being an entrepreneur is one of the most challenging self-growth, personal growth experiences ever. And being a yoga teacher is very much like that. And guess what? When you are a yoga teacher, you're an independent contractor. So essentially, you are an entrepreneur even if you're teaching quote unquote on the side, because I know you're going to bring that up again. So, how to tap into your intuition? Again, I go back to one of the 6 pillars in the confidence practice, which is the framework that I created for building your confidence, and self-inquiry. So, asking yourself, right, the self and self-inquiry, asking yourself, what kind of yoga teacher do I want to be? So write it down, journal it out today, not tomorrow, not next week, today. What kind of yoga teacher do I want to be? Without any regard for how many classes, how many hours, if you have a full-time job or not, none of that. Put that off to the side. Just simply ask yourself the question, what kind of yoga teacher do I want to be? And what is the direction that I want to go? These are open-ended questions on purpose so that you have time to and space to answer however you want. One of the other great ways to tap into your intuition is to be in silence. To give yourself time, either in meditating or going for a walk with no headphones or anything like that, and just being in silence, driving home from work in silence in the car, doing yoga nidra, anything where you're in silence and just asking yourself the inquiry questions, asking yourself just open-ended questions like, how do I feel in this moment? What's coming up for me in this moment? What kind of yoga teacher do I want to be in this moment? What am I called to do as a yoga teacher? When you ask yourself an open-ended question like that, your intuition will give you an answer. It has to. It's going to hear the question and it's going to strive to answer it. That's how the brain works. And if we go brain to mind and mind to intuition and maybe intuition as part of the mind, you can see it's just a hop, skip, and a jump to tapping into your intuition. And then one of the other ways that you can tap into your intuition is being open to experimenting with different things. When I was talking earlier about so many teachers being driven by hours, chasing hours, feeling like getting more hours is going to help them feel more confident, help them feel more empowered, help them feel more authentic in their classes. And when it doesn't happen, being unsure as to, well, where do I go from here? Well, when I work with yoga teachers in either of those 2 programs that I talked to you about earlier, I work with a particular technique, coaching technique called experimentation. This is where I offer up different things that you can experiment with in your classes based on what you're saying is the problem and finding out more about the belief that's blocking you from making a change on your own. So a perfect example of this would be if you came to me and said, I'm having a really hard time remembering my sequence, and it's causing me to feel really nervous when I go into class because I'm freaked out that I'm going to forget the sequence and I'm going to be standing there feeling silly because I don't remember what comes next in the sequence. And I might say to you, okay, well, what's preventing you from teaching a similar sequence from class to class, if not literally the same thing? Because it would sort of make logical sense that if you just stuck to the same sequence, it'd be easier to remember the more you did it. And you might say, well, I can't do that, Karen, because my students are going to get bored. And I've also recently heard people say that if I teach the same sequence over and over again, people's bodies aren't going to get the kind of workout they need. I'm going to reinforce certain kinds of muscles and neglect other kinds of muscles. So anatomically, it's not safe or it's not helpful. And so now I'm uncovering what is the belief that's driving this yoga teacher to teach in a way that's blocking her from actually feeling like she can remember the sequence. And I can't say, oh, well, those are stupid beliefs, don't believe that, because she believes those things. And you might be this person, you might believe those things. So It doesn't matter what I say. You believe what you believe. You've been telling yourself these things over and over again enough times that you think it's a fact. Even though your experience when you go into the room is that you're nervous and you can't remember the sequence. That's how powerful beliefs are. They'll cause you to keep doing the same thing, even though you're not getting the result you want. So, what I might say instead is, well, how about would you be willing to just use one of the sequences you've taught a handful of times? Would you be willing to teach that same sequence for the next 3 classes? And then let's get on a Zoom call and see how it went. Would you be willing to do that? So, notice how I'm framing it like an experiment. We're just going to try this. And 10 times out of 10, the teacher will say yes. Because remember, the only reason I'm having this conversation with somebody is because they've enrolled in one of my programs, and that demonstrates that they're coachable. People that hold back money and they don't want to invest money in one of my programs, they're not coachable yet. They may never be coachable, but they're not coachable yet. They're thinking, I can teach myself. The problem's not big enough. I don't have the money. I can't afford it. It won't work for me. All of those things are just ways to illustrate that I'm just not in a coachable place right now, especially when someone says I can figure it out for myself. And there's nothing wrong with not being coachable. That's a choice that you're making. Just sometimes for me, what hurts my heart is when I talk to a yoga teacher, I hear the problems, I see the potential in somebody, as I always do. I always see that higher level person in the person. And then they say, no, I don't think I'm gonna, I'm going on vacation, or I don't have time for this right now, or I don't have the money. Like there isn't always, but oftentimes there's just an excuse, right? There's always a reason. The ego will always find a reason to keep you where you are, even if where you are is not where you want to be. Isn't that so crazy how the mind works like that? And I just have seen so much evidence of this. People that reach out to me and they say, I want to hear more about your program. And then when I share information, they ghost. And then I reach out again and I say, hey, I'd love to reconnect with you. You were asking about the accelerator program. Ghost. And I just don't get it. I don't get why people wouldn't just write you back and just say, hey, you know what? Now's not a good time. Or, hey, you know what? I've changed my mind. They just evaporate. And it sort of is reminiscent of when you're dating somebody and they ghost you and you just are left like, what happened? So I find that also very interesting from a mindset perspective, that people are just willing to just stay in the muck of a problem rather than just having a conversation. And so that difference there is what coachable looks like. So by the time I'm having this conversation with somebody, they've already said yes to enrolling to work with me. They've already paid money to work with me. Paying money is not about me getting money. It's about the person putting down money to say, I believe in myself and I believe in myself to pay for help. I recognize that paying for help is going to expedite me transforming into the kind of teacher I want to be, because I appreciate that trying to figure it out on my own is going to take forever. So, once you're at that point, you're coachable. And so 10 times out of 10, the person says, yes, I'd love to experiment with this in my classes. And they do. And every single time with regard to this one experiment, when we hop on that next Zoom call, do you know what the person says? Oh my God, Karen, I can't believe I waited so long to just use the same sequence. It's going great. Every single time I teach, I remember it more and more. And therefore, I feel more confident. And surprisingly, no one's saying anything. No one cares. No one cares that I'm teaching the same sequence that I taught last Tuesday. So again, these beliefs are so strong that it can really take up so much mental space and block you from being the kind of teacher you want to be. The other thing that yoga teachers have to contend with is what in business is called shiny object syndrome. Shiny object syndrome reflects you're doing something in your business in a particular way and you happen to see an ad or you happen to talk to somebody, or maybe you're in a group with other entrepreneurs and somebody in the group might say, oh, I'm using the such and such technique to get customers, or I'm using such and such software to reach out to people in the DMs on social media. And you're all of a sudden fixated on a technique they're using or on a tool they're using. That's the shiny object. And even though you've got your own process, and even though you've got your own way, and even though you're experimenting in your own way, you're now fixated on the shiny object and you're hearing what this person is getting in terms of results using this quote unquote shiny object. And now you're changing the direction of your ship. You're headed towards, I got to get this tool. I got to buy this subscription. I got to try this, right? And now you're completely moving away from your intuition. And this is what yoga teachers do all the time, because so many conversations I have with teachers, they'll say, well, I go to so-and-so's class and she's teaching blah, 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 blah type of poses or certain types of sequences or certain things that she's including in her classes. I have to include those things. I'm feeling like when I take that person's class and I see what she's including, now I'm feeling like I need to include those things as well. So now the shiny object syndrome that we were talking about before in terms of business, now it's become part of how yoga teachers are influenced by other people in terms of what they're going to do in their classes. So shiny object syndrome just takes you further and further away from your intuition. It's the same thing with comparing yourself to other teachers. And I know you've probably done this. And yes, I hear this all the time from people. It's sort of the same experience. I go to a class. I feel like I'm not as good as the teacher teaching. I feel like I should be walking around like she is, or I should be changing my sequence to more match what she's doing. So any of these feelings where you're comparing yourself to somebody else and making yourself feel like you're less than that person, that's similar to shiny object syndrome. And it just takes you further away from your intuition. In fact, it devalues you. Comparing yourself to somebody else and leaving that class feeling like you need to be doing what that person is doing is like a slap in the face to you. It's devaluing your own intuitive sense, your gut sense of how you want to be teaching. What if that teacher is following her own gut instinct, her own intuition, and that's how she's teaching? That doesn't mean that that matches you. I mean, one example I can remember in my own life is the teacher that taught before me. She used really loud rock music in her classes. And every time I would come in and I would hear her classes before mine, and she had tons of people and they loved her class, and the energy when they left the studio as we were crossing over, my students were going in and her students were coming out, was super high. I could tell that people loved it. But in my mind, playing loud, blasting rock music in a class is not something that resonates with me. It's not something that I wanted to do. It's not something that my intuition was saying was a match for my authentic way of teaching. Even in the face of all these people she had coming out of the studio, I could see she was getting results that were highly desirable. She had really big class numbers. But I wasn't looking at that and saying, oh, well, now I have to use rock music in my classes. Now I have to, be teaching the way this person's teaching. So this is the thing. And it takes inner strength to be the kind of teacher who says no to that and yes to me, yes to my intuition. So my question to you as you hear me talking about this is, if you are not at that point where you are confident enough in yourself to say yes to you and no to those things, what's blocking you there? And this is part of what the 5-day confidence challenge will bring forth. When I share that at the end of this episode, you'll see how you can do that. So the next thing is, what is the ultimate outcome for you? I've asked this now 2 times, and so you probably got just a general idea of the answer to the question, just because you've heard the question 2 times and your brain is answering it, right? So what is the ultimate outcome for you? Is it owning your own studio? Is it teaching corporate classes? Is it working with children? Is it starting a women's wellness group? Is it teaching a whole bunch of studio classes in a particular studio where you used to practice? Is it teaching online? Like, what is your ultimate outcome? Because defining that is the first step, right? Because after we define what the ultimate outcome is, we want to then say, well, what is the first step? What is the first step towards that ultimate outcome? You know, a lot of times when I have a coaching call with a yoga teacher, we'll have a lot of stuff we cover. And at the end of the call, I'll say, okay, we've talked about X, Y, and Z today. We covered a lot of ground. What's from this call? What's the next step? What's the first step you're going to do? Because I want the person to hone in on the first action step. Because a lot of times, especially when I have coaching calls with teachers inside my program, there'll be a lot of things that come up. And there is work to be done in terms of just feeling the feelings, but there is also action. And we want to have a good balance between feeling the feelings and taking the action, because the feelings without the action doesn't move us forward. The action moves us forward. And when we move forward, we start to build momentum and what I call the magic of momentum. And I know you know what that feels like. Think of anything you did where it required step by step to get there. Training for a marathon, hosting a dinner party, raising a child. I mean, there's so many different things you could apply that paradigm to. And as you take step by step, you start to build momentum and it feels magical because you feel like, oh, I'm moving forward closer to my ultimate outcome. And it feels magical. Doesn't feel hard. It feels amazing. So that's why I always ask that question and I ask it to you now. What is your first step? And sometimes teachers will say, well, I'm stuck, I'm overwhelmed. Okay, I hear you. But there's always a way through that. So if you're really stuck and overwhelmed, just send me a DM on Instagram and let's talk about it and we can come up with your first step. So as we wrap up this conversation, I'm going to direct you to the show notes and you can go through, it's a self-guided experience, the 5-day confidence challenge. And this is predicated on my homegrown methodology that I created at the beginning of this year, 2025, in response to evaluating all the work I've been doing over the years with women in my programs and pulling what are some of the common threads, what are some of the common themes, what are the learnings that I've taken from working with all these different women and seeing them transform. And the confidence practice that I created, which is six components to the confidence practice. And I'll just quickly tell you what they are. So imagine at the center of the circle, or imagine like a bike wheel, and at the center of the wheel is confidence, feeling confident. And then the spokes of the wheel are things like yoga and movement every day, one or the other, experimentation, which we talked about, self-inquiry, which we talked about, meditation, being in stillness, which we discussed, visualization, and healthy habits, whatever those healthy habits are for you. You know, there's a little sidebar conversation we can have about healthy habits, but for time purposes, we'll save that for another day. So those 6 spokes on the wheel, at the center of the wheel is greater confidence. And the confidence practice, which is the 6 spokes I just described, are supported when we are willing to experiment with different things in our life, in our classes. So when you go through this 5-day confidence challenge, you'll be met with every single day, different things to experiment with, all in service to helping you feel more confident. So go to the show notes, you'll see the link to that. And certainly let me know if you have any questions when you go through it. And I'd love to know how you experience it. So send me a DM on Instagram and let me know. So you're going to check the show notes for the 5-day confidence challenge. And then the last thing, I've talked a couple of times about the Yoga Anatomy Blueprint Learning Program and the Yoga Anatomy Accelerator. The Blueprint Learning Program is a one-on-one program over 90 days. The accelerator program I created in response to requests for something shorter and focused that people could easily fit into their schedule. So that's how the Yoga Anatomy Accelerator was born. It's under $400. It's 4 trainings focusing you on just what you need to know about anatomy and how to apply it to your cueing and sequencing. So when you go through these 4 sessions, I'll walk you through. Note, I'm not going to send you off to watch videos. There is a video portal to support the program, but the main way you'll be supported is through these one-on-one calls with me. So I'm recording this in July. I'm starting the July group actually this week, but you can enroll anytime. I do these cohorts every month. So I did April, I did May, I did June, I'm into July, and there will be an August group. But again, I don't know when you're listening to this, you can enroll in this program at any time. So go to the link in the show notes, go to the link in my Instagram, go to the link on my website. Any of those places has the link to the Yoga Anatomy Accelerator Program. And here's the thing, I'm so excited for you to sign up. I'm going to actually give you a $50 discount. So send me a DM on Instagram with the phrase podcast offer accelerator, and I'll give you a coupon code and you can enroll in the accelerator program for $50 off. So that means your total expense is just $347, which is nothing. Over the course of your life as a yoga teacher is literally nothing. Like, I really should be charging $1,000 for this program, but I want to make it such an easy yes for you that, I mean, maybe I will eventually increase it in the next month or so, but for right now, you can get it. And whenever you're listening to this, I'll honor that price. So that's it for today. We are complete, and reach out. Let me know how things are going. I'd love to, of course, cover any topics you'd like to see covered. So send me a DM on Instagram and let me know topics you'd like to see covered. And I know that I mentioned talking about feedback. We'll cover that in next week's episode because we're running out of time today. Okay, it was really good to spend time with you today, and I'll talk to you on the next episode. Namaste. Thanks for being here with me today. I hope you enjoyed the episode. And hey, one more thing. While I don't know you personally, I know what a yoga teacher looks like who's ready to have a breakthrough to being the kind of yoga teacher who walks around the room, sharing cues you know the reason for, understands anatomy, teaching signature sequences without notes or any need to practice with class, and loves teaching yoga without stress, anxiety, or nervousness. If you are ready to be that yoga teacher, here is your next step. DM me the words podcast offer, and I will give you a special incentive to work with me inside of my signature program just because you are listening to the podcast. DM me on Instagram at Bare Bones Yoga. I can't wait to hear from you.